This year's summer event was actually pretty nice, and we did end up learning something about Fontaine. But what's most important with these summer events are the hints about the next nation's Archon Quest, in this case Fontaine's Masquerade of the Guilty. Obviously, if you haven't played Secret Summit Paradise, this video is going to spoiler the entire quest, so unless you don't care, you might want to come back after you played it through. As always, this is a theory video. I use information available in the game, but my conclusions and theories are not to be considered the official lore, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. Since there are quite a few things that we need to talk about, let's begin. First, we need to talk about the Oceanids. Edea said that she's an Oceanid who was exiled when the former Hydra Archon passed away, but if we talk to her after the main quest ended, she says that the Oceanids fled Fontaine, just like Endora told us about Rhodeia. The idea of them fleeing Fontaine makes more sense than them being exiled, since Rhodeia keeps asking us if we're assassins sent from her homeland to take care of her. I mean, if Focalors exiled them, she wouldn't send assassins. Edea also told us that the reason why they fled was that the water in Fontaine changed after the original Hydra Archon died, and now is full of pain and hatred. And we also know from Anatole, back in version 3.5, that the people of Fontaine have been dealing with a waterline crisis. Let's also remember that different NPCs told us that they're trying to come up with a solution to Fontaine's major issue by researching an alternate energy source. This makes me think that the water in Fontaine depends on the Hydra Archon. It's not just water that is naturally there. I mean, Vasco did tell us that the water in Fontaine is special and we can only dive in the nation of Hydra because of that. We know that the Lord of Amrita, the original Hydra Archon, was a loving god that wanted to connect the whole world through water, and that her own water was so pure that, together with Varena, it can essentially negate the effect of abyssal power. So it's no wonder that the Oceanists decided to flee from Fontaine when Focalors arrived. She is clearly the opposite of the Lord of Amrita. She is childish, she cares about her own entertainment, and her legal system is so strict and threatening that even the smallest offense or suspicion of one could result in a death sentence. Like I said, Rhodeia is still expecting Focalors to send an assassin after her, 500 years after she fled, so that goes to show how petty and dangerous Focalors may be. Now, if the water of a loving Hydra Archon is the purest water in existence, how does that change when the new Archon is petty, revengeful, and childish? Well, the water has to be dirty, polluted we might say. But the water we saw in the teaser trailer seems to be crystalline, which means that the pollution may not be just a physical tangible consequence but also an elemental one. Like Edea said, the water is full of pain and hatred. So let's speculate about Focalors for a bit, shall we? Like I said multiple times before, I think that the Archon and war quests of a previous nation always have hints about the next one. In Inazuma we were introduced to puppets, the power of dreams and memories, and in Enkanomiya we read the parable of the tree of the king's garden that grew 500 years in an instant from one of its branches into a new tree that was a continuation of the original one. All these notions prepared us to Sumeru and they all made sense once we got there. Now in Sumeru we learned that puppets can receive elemental powers and that they can be made gods by the people, but also that Rene found something special in the Veluriyam oasis and through experiments he could extract a will from it. What can all this mean? Well, my current hypothesis about Focalors is that she is an android, something like Catherine we might say, that is hosting the will that Rene and probably Alain Guillotin, the founder of the Fontaine Research Institute of Kinetic Energy Engineering, extracted from whatever he found in the Veluriyam oasis. But what did he find there? Well, he wrote about a sacred lotus, which seems to be the Gaukerena, the giant lotus inside the Harvest Token, which basically is the remains of the consciousness of the previous Hydra Archon in a new form. We could discuss about the fact that the Gaukerena share similarities with Rene's and Jacob's body structures, which means that they're not humans but some kind of descendants of the Hydra Archon, so they may have been Oceanids like Edea that turned into humans, but let's not go there in this video. What's relevant right now is that Rene may have taken back to Fontaine part of the Gaukerena to analyze and experiment on, in order to find and extract a will, which was necessary to prevent a new catastrophe in Fontaine. My theory is that they managed to extract this will, but do you remember that the Lord Amrita was corrupted by forbidden knowledge before dying and her water was about to be completely polluted by it? What if the will they extracted was the corrupted version of the previous Archon and they put it inside an android, creating as a consequence a new Hydra Archon, that is Focalors. This would also explain why her body is older than Nahida's, but her personality is pretty much that of a spoiled child. If this is what really happened, Focalors would be able to rule over the water of Fontaine because at the end of the day, she still is the continuation of the previous Archon, only a messed up version of her, and this made the water painful and filled with hatred. Bitter, we could say, which is life-threatening to the Oceanids, so they had to flee to survive. Does a human-made android that hosts a godly being with a will of its own remind you of someone? And what about a god made by humans? Or maybe the continuation of a life as a new one with a will and fate of its own. Also, do you remember how Nabu Malikata told Hvarena that the Lord of Sweet Dew, the Hydra Archon, and the Lord of Grass and Trees, Rukkhadevata, shall precede you in losing their divine forms and that they shall be forgotten? If I'm right and Focalors is a new version of the Lord of Amrita but corrupted by forbidden knowledge, then it is very likely that we will have to deal with forbidden knowledge again, and that at the end of the Archon Quest, the people will forget about the first Hydra Archon as well, and Focalors' personality and mentality will hopefully drastically change. If you're thinking that forbidden knowledge was completely erased when Nahida erased Rukkhadevata, well, guess again. The Celestial Nails can transform forbidden knowledge into something stable and less dangerous, and we know that Hvarena, a fragment of a Seelie, can negate forbidden knowledge and the Abyss. Simurgh flew into the Amrita pool before the Harvest Token was created, so it may have stabilized the forbidden knowledge that corrupted the Hydra Archon. By the way, the fact that Nabu Malikata knew that Rukkhadevata was gonna be forgotten is something I will talk about in a future video. I have a theory about fate, but I still haven't found a good way to explain it. Now, going back to the summer event, I would like to point out the fact that it may have told us that there is more to the elements than we think. Just like the Dendro Archon is the avatar of Irminsul, the tree that rules over knowledge, which is the fuel of Teyvat, and her powers rule over dreams, which are the knowledge of living people, something similar may be said about the Hydra Archon. As a general description, water is a principle and main requirement for life, and another notion we learned in Sumeru was that the winners of the war of the past received the right to shape the world as they saw fit, which is interesting considering how the entirety of the Veluriyam Mirage was shaped as Idea saw fit through the power of Hydro. Let's also remember that the developers did their worst to mark the fact that the world inside the bottle domain had been flipped upside down, which is a reference to Teyvat itself since it's basically a domain as well, only extremely huge. I wouldn't exclude the idea that Hydro is going to be connected to some other mysterious device like Irminsul that shapes, regulates and sustains the microcosm/master domain Teyvat and its life. Before the next topic, let me ask you this. Was it really surprising that the device that operates the Veluriyam Mirage was eventually a Loom? I mean, we are going to meet our sassy boy Danes left somewhere in Fontaine, so it's kinda obvious that he's going to pick up from where he left off with the Loom of Fate. He did say that he was gonna tell us who saw us through the memories next time we met. Now, another very interesting notion we learned during the event came from Zosimo's theatrical work. The story talks about a thief from a land where the light didn't shine. One day, he saw a single light traveling through the sky and followed it, but when he reached it, he only found a girl. She was from the kingdom atop the waterfalls, but she had to flee when the reigning dynasty fell and a new one seized power. She fled through a forest where she was helped by a mage glowing with fire, who gave her a bottle she found in an oasis by a crescent-shaped lake during one of her adventures. The mage had the power to grant people their wishes, so she poured some of her power inside the bottle so the people could fulfill their wishes inside of it, but she also granted the girl one single wish outside of it. The girl wished to be taken where no one would ever find her and she was teleported to the middle of the desert, but the thief found her regardless. Because the thief wanted some light for his land, the girl wished for it inside the bottle, and seeing that it shone through the glass, she gave him the bottle and eventually they went together to his land. Now, the girl is most definitely Idea, who fled Fontaine when Focalors became the new Archon and she wanted not to be found by anyone sent after her. The mage is obviously Alice, who found the battle probably here near the Shred's Mausoleum, where a lake shaped as a crescent moon lies, so the battle most likely belonged to a genie, also judging by its shape. The thief, on the other hand, well, I don't think he's from Caria. I believe him to be from Gurabad. Let me explain. When we summoned the Veluriyam Mirage, we were exactly here. Very close to the Tanit camp, but as a consequence very close to where Gurabad is supposed to be. And we know that Gurabad fell into a deep chasm, so it most likely turned into a very dark land. I hope that this was the developer's way to tell us that Gurabad is coming sooner or later. When it comes to the ending of the story though, it feels like Zosimos was out of ideas, so I don't think the ending is very accurate, especially because the bottle is still in the desert. Now, going back to Alice, I don't think she can actually grant people their wishes. As Kokomi told us, the Shinro casket was lost centuries ago when the last prefect of Yashiori Island, potentially Lord Kitain, died, but in reality it has been inside the core of the Veluriyam Mirage all along. The casket is made from the remains of a yokai called Shinkiro, and it gains power through people's wishes. Now, in Japanese mythology, the Shinkiro are not exactly yokai but kai, basically oddities, and they form illusions of fantastic cities that can never be reached on the horizon. More specifically, these cities are visions of Ryugujo, the mythical palace of Ryujin, the dragon lord that lives on the bottom of the sea, also known as Owatatsumi, and incidentally, in many legends, it can transform into a human. Are they hinting at the water dragon from Enkanomiya by any chance? Does this mean that we're getting a new quest in Enkanomiya, which is my favorite map? Or are we finally going to find out if Tsumi is actually the new water dragon like I believe her to be? Anyway, these illusions are the product of the legendary giant clams called Shin, which are holy beasts related to dragons. But nowadays the word Shinkiro has just taken on the meaning of, you might have guessed it, Mirage. What I'm led to believe is that the last prefect of Yashiori Island may have given Alice the Shinro casket before dying, and when in the story the mage blew into the bottle, it may simply mean that she put the casket inside the domain's core where it has been for little less than 500 years. Lastly, but very interesting, is the last show of Daya's 3-day reverie, Skycastle Saviors. It talks about a group of warriors, later known as the Cliff Keepers, who built an observation post on a cliff to warn the people of the area when floods and storms were about to happen. One day, the Elder tasked the miraculous architect with the construction of a floating town in the sky, but with the passing of time, it started losing altitude. So a great calamity loomed as it could have impacted into the land below. Only by collecting animal particles could the city in the sky be brought back to its intended height. Now, let's skip the fact that the architect in the story and Idea's Curios from another quest are just screaming Honkai Star Rail, let me know if those exist in Honkai Impact as well, but doesn't this floating island remind you of Celestia, which seems to be somewhere above Fontaine? Again, Rene wrote in his investigation notes about an impact of some sorts that cannot be avoided. Could it be that Celestia is losing altitude? I don't know how I feel about it being built by the people of ancient Fontaine, like pre-Envoy A Genshin since it hovers a Vindag near back then, but it's still a possibility. Or maybe the architect is the master of the heavens, the second who came, and the keepers are the envoys of the gods. Who knows? And the fact that it needs animal particles to keep its altitude, is that another hint at Venti's true identity? Or maybe I'm just reading too much into this, but well, I'll let you decide. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. If you don't want to miss my next video or my next stream, because sooner or later I will stream again, then turn the notification bell on. At this point, I'm basically waiting for the next teaser trailer to make yet another video about Fontaine, so I hope it'll come soon. In the meantime, I'll be playing Honkai Star Rail version 1.2, and who knows, maybe I'll make another video about it, especially if I get more info about the Eons. Well then, thanks for watching, and until next time, over and out.